Hello, everyone, and welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Transportation System.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the first full episode of the Double Dose of Disney podcast. My name is Brittany, and I'm joined here by my co-host and amazing husband, Tony. Today we'll be talking all about our first trip to Disney, which made us fall in love with everything Disney, from the parks to the history to all of the details that Disney puts into everything. And we're going to be sharing a few lessons that we learned along the way, which we've since incorporated into all of our trips, and we highly recommend incorporating into your vacations as well.
We're caffeinated and ready to go. That's probably the best tip. Be caffeinated when you go to Disney.
We actually started our morning. We went and grabbed a Starbucks, and it's going to be a fun Disney day. We are actually going to go see Haunted Mansion today, which we cannot wait to go see. So I guess getting into our first trip to Disney together, we went in February of 2020. We had started planning our vacation in, I think it was like August or September of that year. And initially I was like, I'm going to plan this whole vacation just because I like planning things. Obviously, that's what I do for a living. But at the same time, we quickly realized that planning a Disney vacation on your own can be overwhelming. So I reached out to a travel planner, and at the time we booked Pop Century Resort for 5 nights. We were going for our anniversary, so we went at the beginning of February, and we had added on the Disney dining plan. And then right before our trip in like late December, you want to take over?
And that was my first trip ever to Disney.
Yeah.
I'd never even been before. We had a conversation. I said, I haven't tried anything once. And so we started planning that vacation. I had no clue what to expect. Didn't know anything about anything other than what we'd watched or seen on TV. Started watching things on Imagineering.
Well, and Disney had changed so much since I was a kid. Like, back when I went as a kid, there was no fast pass system. There was no dining plan. You just kind of, like, went. I remember my mom had, like, a Disney, what are, like, those unofficial guidebooks. But that was kind of it. But we kind of had a plot twist right before our trip. Do you want to talk about that?
Started out.
So, right before our trip at the end of December of 2019, Tony had unexpectedly started his business, started his business. Do you want to talk about that?
So if we're being real, guys, all right, I got fired. I got fired from my job. Didn't know what we were going to do. I've always been a guy that kind of worked my hands. Said, all right, we're going to do this thing in a roll. I'm going to start my own hand business, and just off and running. Made it happen. It was a tough time, but it ended up good. It was right before COVID started, so it was definitely crazy. But God let us through. We kept on a rock and roll. We did not let the Disney trip go.
Yeah, and we were really, like, thinking at the time, like, do we still go to Disney? Because the trip was already paid for. We had the dining plan. But at the same time, like, I think anybody who started a business for themselves or anything like that,
safe.
Yeah, you're like, okay, realistically, how is money going to be coming in and all of that stuff? Do we still take this vacation that's costing us a couple of $1,000s? And since we already had the trip paid for, and since we already had the dining plan, which gave us dining credit, we were like, yeah, let's go. So we really trusted God to kind of provide, and that trip was absolutely what we needed in every single way.
Well, as being someone who's never been there before and going there for the first time, it was crazy fun.
Yeah, and it was
like a kid.
It was. So we got there on February 2nd. It was a Sunday, and it was actually Super Bowl Sunday. Tony is a huge Super Bowl fan. So we'll have to, or football fan. We'll have to do an episode.
Do a whole episode on that. Where to go, where to see, where to eat.
That's what I was going to say. It was so much fun. I remember we planned that trip. I worked with the travel planner, and I kind of told her, like, I want to immerse myself in planning and stuff. I need your help. And so she was there to kind of help me plan as much or as little as she wanted to, which is kind of what I do with my clients. But I had gotten a book on planning on Walt Disney World. It's called The Unofficial Guide. And I got that book. I started kind of watching vlogs, but I didn't really understand what they were at the time. And we literally, like, back then the Magical Express was offered. So
They had the free Magic Band still.
yeah, we had the free Magic Bands. It was so much fun. Like, we got to the airport, dropped our bags we flew out of Austin. Dropped our bags in the Austin, like at the Southwest baggage thing in Austin. Got to Orlando and, like, didn't even have to worry about our bags because we just hopped on the Magical Express and then we got to our resort.
Even the Magical Express was crazy to me because I'd never been on it before.
Well, and I hadn't
Not
either.
seeing your bags until you need them.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, you went to, so we were supposed to be staying at Pop Century. Pop Century overbooked. They moved us to Art of Animation Resort. And Disney, of course, like, goes above and beyond to make up for any of these things. So we're supposed to be at Pop Century. Pop Century had just been renovated. That's part of the reason we booked it. We got moved to Art of Animation. We were in a Little Mermaid room. So Little Mermaid rooms are so cute. Like, for a family, they're great. But for a second anniversary, it was like we're going to be waking up in a clamshell of flounder over our head. Like, that wasn't necessarily...
Next to the pool. Smelled like a kid just slept on our bed and like chlorine.
Yeah, it smelled like chlorine. We were like, this isn't it.
We can make it happen, be fun, and enjoy it, but we weren't feeling it. So we asked for a little something different.
Yeah, and what we did was, so we got in, I think, on Sunday afternoon, and it was like 4:30. We had our carry-ons. Of course, we didn't have to wait for our luggage because it was going to be arriving to our room. That was one of the big perks with the Magical Express is Disney would take your bags from the airport to your resort room for you. Like, you did not have to stop and pick them up at baggage claim or anything like that unless you wanted to. So we opted to just drop our bags in Austin. They then arrived at our resort later on in the day, which was great. But like Tony said, like, we were like, we're not super crazy about this room, but we were kind of in a hurry to get over to Disney Springs to watch the Super Bowl. So we just threw our carry-ons in our room and then later talked to a cast member at the front desk at Art of Animation. Of course, they like went above and beyond to like compensate.
They found us a room.
Yeah, they ended up finding us. They found us a Cars Family Suite later in the week. So they comped us. They gave us a credit on our account for the week to make up for it. It was just like, it was such a great...
if they can do something, they will make it happen. Sometimes they just can't make it happen, but more times than not, they're going to do something for you.
Yeah, and they went above and beyond. I remember them like looking at like the Port Orleans resorts, like the Moderate resorts and stuff like that, and they were like, "We're so sorry, we're booked." But anyway, like, I remember one of my favorite memories from that trip was we got to the boathouse. That's where we ate dinner our first night, and that's where we ate dinner the first night of every single trip. And we were sitting there and we were watching the Super Bowl on the TVs, and Tony was so happy. And I remember just like seeing this smile on his face, and I was like, this is all worth it. Like, all of this planning, like, this is exactly what I envisioned in my head. Like, it truly was turning out to be more than what I had ever envisioned.
That's what Disney is about. You get to go there and be out of the real world, and what's happening at work, all that doesn't matter anymore, and you can just enjoy like being a kid, being with your family, your friends, and just doing something that you would not do anywhere else. You can't do anywhere else.
Yeah, and it's such a, Disney is just such a magical place. I think, like, if you follow me on TikTok, you see, like, how truly passionate I am about Disney. Even going there now, like, that's a part of my job, whether it's gathering content, whether it's planning vacations, like, all of those things, like, learning all of that stuff. I truly just love being in the atmosphere of Disney. Like, whether it's Disney Springs is always one of our favorite days of our trip because it's just so much fun. So we had fun that night, and then the next day was our first day in the parks, and we went to Magic Kingdom. That was our anniversary. And I remember we went and ate at Be Our Guest for lunch. Do you remember this? And we were walking out of Be Our Guest, and there's a skyrider who, like, he's kind of known for riding things in the skies above the Disney parks, and he was riding Trust Jesus in the sky. And we just, like, sat and thought, we were like, this is so perfect. Like,
is this guy hired to do this or what?
Yeah.
Is this like a 1 in a million shot here?
Is this like a 12 o'clock showing of the skywriting? Like, Disney's amazing, but...
especially if you've never seen anything at Disney ever, everything's exciting and you think it's just for you.
Yeah, and it was like, and it was so perfect. We've seen him do that, I think, one other time. Our last trip, we saw him writing, like,
some different stuff.
Love God or something like that. But it just felt like, okay, God, like,
It's a sign just for us.
Like, we know that this is where we're supposed to be. Yeah. Like, we know that this is where we're supposed to be. But it was such an amazing trip. And we learned so much from that trip. We had so much fun. And I remember just, like, every single day it just felt like it got better. I remember, like, being on the bus on the way to Animal Kingdom and telling Tony, like, we've got to stay another day. Like, we can't leave yet. And
we already had jobs picked out of what we were going to do in the parks. when we retire or if we move there and we need a job.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we both said that we were going to be, like, what, zookeepers at Animal Kingdom?
Yeah, I think we were both in Animal Kingdom looking at animals or talking to people about the animals.
Yeah, because when I had gone to Disney with my family, it was in 1998. 1998. It was right before... Or 99. It was right before Animal Kingdom opened. We were there in February. Animal Kingdom opened in April on Earth Day of that year. So I had never been to Animal Kingdom before. So Tony and I both got to experience that together. And that was so cool to get to go to Animal Kingdom for the first time because it's just so immersive there.
Yeah, especially seeing the tree of life for the first time.
Yeah.
At night. It just... something you never even seen before.
Like, in 2020, before the closures, Animal Kingdom had an evening show. So Animal Kingdom's never had a fireworks show, obviously, because of the animals. But they used to have an evening show called River of Lights, which was really cool. And I remember there was a Tarzan song, You'll Be in My Heart, playing. And I was just we were standing on the bridge, and I was like, this has been the best vacation. I don't know that we'll ever get to come back here, but I would love to one day. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I can, like, look back at things and be like, my vision was so small because this is obviously turned into our lives, like kind of like a big chunk of our lives, like what makes, like not makes us happy, but like it's just a big chunk of our lives is Disney. And so looking back at that being like, wow, I can't believe the way that like our life is really transformed from that moment, you know?
I think we talked about doing this podcast on that first trip.
No, it was our second trip.
Okay.
Our second trip, we were at Coronado. And we were on the bridge, and you told me we should do a podcast. So that was 3 years ago.
So what was your favorite memory from that trip?
Just
one.
My favorite memory from that trip, I'm trying to think, would probably be...
Sometimes the first couple blur together.
I know. I always say that my favorite memory from that trip was the first night at the boathouse. Like, just looking over and seeing you smiling, being like... this is going to be the best week. And it truly lived up to every single part of that.
You pretty much stole mine. So Super Bowl for me was definitely, probably, at the boathouse, but I just had the picture of us running around like kids. But you can't run, we know. But just everywhere we went, we're just, what's here? What's there? What's in that store? What's in that park? Never seen that before.
You're kind of like...
so if you could have a bird's eye view on us, we're just kids running around.
And I kind of feel like we're still like that, but we kind of know how to, like...
You've seen it before, so
yeah.
It's not the first time, but we still have the same look and the same feel on it.
Oh, but I forgot. We got to see Patrick Mahomes in Magic Kingdom the next day. So if you've never been to Disney before during Super Bowl, on the day after the Super Bowl, depending on where the Super Bowl is played at and depending on where the team is out of, there'll either be a
closer to...
Yeah, they're either going to be, like, the MVP of the Super Bowl is either going to be at Disneyland or Disney World, and there's a special parade, so it's going to take over, like, the Festival of Fantasy parade, I guess the 3 o'clock parade. So I had kind of done a ton of research on, like, into, like, this parade, so I made sure that we were going to be in Magic Kingdom the day after the Super Bowl, because I knew that's where it was going to happen.
You figured it was going to be my day if we didn't do it?
Yeah, and...
You're scared?
And some people had said, like, I was reading stuff online... and some people had said, like, do research online to, like, a minimum. Like, people online can be crazy. People are like, you need to camp out for, like, 3 hours for this parade. Well, we're not gonna wait around for 3 hours. But we ended up being
You walked right into it, right?
Yeah, we were in Liberty Square. We were at, like, the snack stand. I can't remember what that snack stand is called, like, in Liberty Square. And I think we were getting, like, a Mickey bar or something. And
Mickey bars were huge our first trip.
Yeah, our first trip, I think
we knocked some of those things out.
I think we ate our weight in Mickey bars. But you were standing there and the float just happened to be going by. It was so cool because we got to see Mickey and Patrick Mahomes on the float. Like, that was just such a cool experience too.
I'll have to put some of those pictures up.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll like if you follow us over on like Instagram, we're gonna share like pictures from our trips and stuff like that as like kind of as we go along. So we'll be sure to share some of those. What do you feel like your overall thoughts were on that trip?
It's a big blur, but in a good way, because there's so much, and everything was the first time.
Yeah, and I guess we're looking back at it like so we've been to Disney 5 times now.
Sensory overload. I think that was the phrase. Sensory overload.
Yeah. Disney does. So Disney, if you've never been to Disney before, Disney...
I don't think you blink much during the day.
No. Disney has a way of just incorporating all of your senses. So when you're walking down Main Street, USA, you're looking at all of the buildings. You're hearing the background audio that's strategically placed.
Blowing the smells right at you.
Yeah, they're blowing like so from the confectionery, which is like the bakery on Main Street. They're pumping out smells into the street. Like they're incorporating all of your senses. So it's just I can feel like it's like sensory overload because you're just like, oh my gosh, it's sensory overload in the best way. I feel like my overall thoughts from that trip obviously like just like hooked us on everything. I came home and I was like, I want to be a Disney travel planner. I was like, this is what I want to do for a living.
Did we book a trip before you left that one?
No. No, because then, so we went February 3rd, I guess like early February, and then Disney closed the parks in mid-March for COVID. So we, like, obviously everything changed at that time.
We were on our way back when we were hearing about it.
Yeah, I remember we were at the airport in Orlando and you had gone to like go get food or something. And there were girls behind me that were talking about the cruise ship that was stuck out in the ocean and it was being quarantined for COVID. And I was like, what is going on?
That's what's good about being at Disney, folks, is you can get out of that real world if you turn off your phones and there's no news. So you can't get out of it and worry about it when you get back home. But that was crazy.
Yeah, and
definitely a memory. We
got home and obviously the entire world changed. The world felt like it was shutting down.
And that was definitely a good place to leave a good print on going to Disney World, coming back into the world, and when everyone's probably in the exact opposite spot in that point, we were coming off a good high.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why we love Disney so much, is because we feel like God just placed Disney in our lives at like the perfect time. Like, obviously Tony was starting a new business and we were trusting God for that. We go on our trip and somebody's literally writing "Trust Jesus" in the sky. And then we get back, the entire world shuts down, and while everybody is like consumed by the news and stuff, and don't get me wrong, like we kind of like fought that, like how much are we going to pay attention to the news every day? We also threw ourselves into listening to whether it was podcasts or vlogs or whatever it was.
Still, my points for later. Oh. But going back to that, when we went on that trip, it was easy to get off your phone because there wasn't Genie Plus at that trip.
Yeah. Now
there is, so we're on your phone, so it was easier for us to put our phones away and not look at anything all day long. So that was definitely more like running like a kid and not checking and wait times, and so it was definitely interesting.
I was still on my phone though because we had FastPass, and so we would pick up FastPass on like the Disney World app.
This wasn't as intense.
You didn't have the Disney app back then. I did, and I kind of like we would just take turns like managing it off my phone. So we obviously love that trip. It made us the Disney fans that we are today, but we also learned a few lessons that we've incorporated into our trips since then. And we wanted to kind of share them with you so you don't make the same mistakes that we did.
And a lot of these you probably have heard by now, but you're still our lessons from our first trip that we definitely learned, maybe the hard way.
Yeah.
We just learned it.
What's your first lesson that you took away?
My first one, in no order. I was trying to kind of throw them in random order just in case you might have had it. I was kind of going random on my random. Pack all clothing options. Comfortable shoes. That's yours?
No. Comfy
shoes and or an umbrella or poncho.
Yes, but
we were looking around at certain times thinking, man, we should have done that. Like an umbrella is not just for rain, but keep you out of the sun when you're in a mile-long line in the sun.
But what about cold weather clothes too? Tony's kind of famous for like Tony's very like warm-natured, so he doesn't necessarily, like, when we're at home.
I can wear a jacket unless it's snowing.
Yeah. We went to Disney, I guess it was our second trip. We were on the plane, and the weather changed. And we got off the plane in Orlando, and it was like 55 degrees. And Tony had packed one pair of jeans and one jacket.
Who packs a jacket and, jeans going to Florida?
Yeah, so we went to Disney's.
I can hear you. Comment on that one if you pack anything other than shorts and sandals, so going to Florida in a Hawaiian shirt.
So Tony, we get to Disney, and it's cold. I had packed, like a couple of long sleeve things and a couple of pairs of leggings and then like shorts and t-shirts. And Tony just had
I don't even think I looked at the weather.
No, like
Didn't
Tony
even
had
matter.
packed
It
like
definitely didn't matter at that time.
Tony had packed nothing.
That was the least of worries, just the weather.
So we were like running through Disney Springs trying to find like a jacket, a long sleeve shirt.
We found one. They card them out whenever weather changes real quick. And I think I got the last $70 fleece jacket or whatever on the little fuzzy one at Disney Springs. I found one. It was light, but I found one.
I remember we'll share pictures from that trip eventually, but if you look back at that trip for the first couple of days, Tony's wearing the same pair of we were wearing the same pullover both days because we only had one.
I would do the same thing anywhere. I would change a pullover every day of the week.
My first lesson that I learned, so I feel like on that trip I really learned a lot about kind of like going with the flow more. I learned plan on the front end and be flexible once you get on your vacation. This is something that I always talk to my clients about. I'm big about this. I've had several people, have clients reach out to me, or I have people reach out to me on TikTok and ask like, hey, can you do an itinerary for me for a trip? I'll help make suggestions for you, but it's really important to me that you make your vacation your vacation. On that first trip, I tried to kind of plan, okay, these are all the things that we should do. And I remember, getting there, and I remember we had, dining reservations at Boathouse for dinner the first night. The next day, we had breakfast reservations at the Plaza that morning to get in the Magic Kingdom early. And then we had a dining reservation at Skipper's Canteen for dinner that night. We ended up canceling the Plaza breakfast reservations, which I still regret that because they don't offer those anymore. And not because the breakfast food is amazing. It's just Mickey waffles and stuff. But because you got to be in the park in the morning atmosphere. With that said, I learned quickly plan on the front end and be flexible with the plans. If your party ends up not wanting to go to a dining reservation, that's fine. Cancel it. That's totally fine. It's always better to me to make these dining reservations and then you can cancel them and just go with the flow once you're on vacation. Don't forget it's your vacation.
That's a long one. You stole one mine too, though. It was a good one. I said be prepared for things and not go as planned. Obviously, ours started out that way. Room changes.
True.
I mean, that was another one I had, though, is learn about Disney before you go. It's awesome to be prepared and learn about stuff and have everything planned.
Be prepared.
Okay, moving on. Lost my thought.
Um,
But then on the other flip side, it is fun to be spontaneous though, and not have a plan for a day or two and just flip a coin on where you're going to eat dinner or what you're going to do. But to each his own.
Yeah.
Some people that might freak you out.
I guess we do that. That's one of my favorite memories from some of our trips. Is I think it's on our Animal Kingdom day because the Animal Kingdom typically closes earlier. What we'll do is we don't have a dining reservation that night, and I think it's the last 2 times we've been to Animal Kingdom. We have just played rock paper scissors, or Tony has a Heads or Tails app on his phone that he'll download, and
It's kind of a big deal.
well, last time we were okay, the first bus we see is the bus we're getting on, and we are going to that resort to eat dinner. When you're going to Disney, you can go to any resort to dine at, so you can kind of resort hop and see different resorts, and it's a really fun way to do that. Last time we got on the bus, it was the Contemporary and Wilderness Lodge bus, and we were okay, whatever resort it stops at first, that's where we're getting off. And so we got off at Wilderness Lodge, and we ended up eating dinner at Geyser Point Bar and Grill, and then we got to eat dinner there and watch the fireworks. It was such a fun experience. My next one is always plan a resort day during your vacation. That first trip was really go for us. So we had 5 nights, 1 day in each of the parks. And I remember telling Tony at the end of that trip, my dogs are barking. And Tony's like, how old are you? But
that's where I got my first one from. We were the people soaking our feet in the tub when we got back to our resort that night. Because at that time we didn't really walk a whole lot miles and have our comfy little running shoes like we do now. We were unprepared for the amount of miles.
Yeah, and so what Tony was saying right now, and then what also like we had talked about earlier with like sensory overload. When you're at Disney, it's so fun to have a day outside of the parks to sleep in, and you kind of need that time to like decompress your senses. Just each of the resorts has so much to do. Whether you're staying in a value resort or you're staying in a deluxe resort, there's so many different things you can do during your vacation. You're spending money to stay at that resort, like. Take advantage of just spending a day at the resort, whether you go to Disney Springs, whether you hop to different resorts, whatever that is. Plan a day to just like relax and spend time at the resort.
So that ties into my next one. You stole again. Slow down. Remember, it's a vacation, and you're not gonna see it all, which everyone's probably heard by now.
Yeah.
I mean, because at the end of the day, we do feel like we've been tossed around in a blender in a good way, but you still don't remember to slow down and have a vacation, you know.
I think our first trip was the most like that. I think incorporating a resort day into our vacation since then has kind of made it feel more like a vacation. Sometimes we'll do 2 resort days. It just depends on how long we're staying at Disney. My third lesson I learned is you will walk miles, take comfy shoes. It's kind of like what Tony talked about earlier. We literally were soaking our feet in a bathtub after the second day at Disney. We went to Magic Kingdom the first day, Epcot the second day. We got back to Art of Animation, to Cars Family Suite, and we both had our feet in the bathtub.
And at that time, we probably walked each park 6 times because we had probably no plan. It went back for circle around, back to the other place we were just at, back around the other side. So we probably circled each park 6 to 8 times, probably.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into...
So you can find steps on that year.
Yeah, and Epcot is the biggest park. So, in terms of space. So, it's easy to, in the front of the park, it's called World Celebration, World Nature, World Discovery now. It used to be called Future World. And in the back of the park is World Showcase. And so, it's easy to kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But there's so much walking in between. There's also boats that you can take that will take you from World Showcase to the front of Epcot. We have actually never done that.
Never been on still.
Because we don't...
Going back to my last point, you're never going to see her do it all.
Yeah.
Always be something that you have not done.
Yeah. What's your next point?
Next point. Money, money, money. Be prepared. You will always have unexpected stuff that comes up. Extra merch you want to buy. So just be prepared. Have an extra couple of bills in your back pocket, or something's gonna happen. Just because it's paid for before you get there, don't expect that to be it. Especially if you got kids, there's gonna be more.
Yeah, I'm kind of famous for. So that first trip we had the dining plan. The nice thing about having the dining plan is you can go into any restaurant, and let's say you're sitting at a table service restaurant and you're going to use one of your credits. You can go into I'm trying to think, Skipper's Canteen at Magic Kingdom.
Gyms.
Yeah. And you can choose the most expensive thing on the menu, and it's not going to cost you anything. We'll have to do an episode on how to maximize the dining plan too, because I think that's one of the best ways to do that is if you're going to choose the most expensive option. Obviously, don't make yourself just eat a bunch of food you don't need, but you can choose to eat. What did you get last time we were at Skipper Canteen?
We'll do an episode on that, and we'll put down what we got and see how much you can get out of it and how it's changed now. What it is now, though, it's a little different.
Yeah, but I think that's just I don't know. That's just one of the things that we love too, because I don't like to go on vacation and be on a budget for food.
We ball out on food.
Yeah.
We're food people.
We're food people. We like good food. We don't
We're not gonna bring goldfish in our backpack.
No, and
it's just not us.
I can be kind of
goldfish.
picky with food. That's just kind of who I am. I like to eat good, healthy food.
We're adventurous.
Yes, and we like to be adventurous too.
That's probably Skipper's is right in our alley.
Yeah, and I guess that's something too about Disney that we love is
especially Epcot. We will try everything. Is
the adventure. So on our first trip, I remember planning out our dining, and I was like, oh my gosh, we can eat African food, we can eat Latin food, we can eat Mexican food. We have tons of Mexican food in Texas, but Latin food is different. We can eat Asian food. There's all these different options. And so I strategically kind of chose our dining based off of, okay, if we're eating American food, like we can get American food anywhere. If we're eating American food one day, I don't want us to just eat all American food. I want us to eat like all different types of food. Do you remember that?
I think we packed on a couple of pounds.
Yeah. Back then we kind of lived.
All the walking didn't really
No, I weighed 9 pounds more when we got back than I weighed when we left.
That's a choice. You worked hard to get there.
Yeah, I worked hard.
We got our money's worth. Though.
I ate a lot of Mickey bars. But like Tony said, we weren't necessarily, like, we didn't walk as much back then. We weren't necessarily, you were active, but I wasn't necessarily as active then.
I think after that trip, we purposely walked a couple miles.
Yeah.
Daily.
Yeah, I wasn't, like, Tony.
We were priming ourselves for our next trip already.
Tony's, like, as a side note, like, he is, like, a NASM certified personal trainer. So he's always, like, he used to teach, like, boot camp classes and stuff like that. I was never really into all that. I've gotten more into, like, health and fitness and things like that in the last couple of years. And if you follow me on Instagram, I talk about, like, food choices and stuff all the time. So we try to incorporate that into Disney. And there's a lot of things.
You can eat really good and real healthy in Disney. Yeah,
you can. Like, one of my favorite things is Skipper Canteen has sustainable fish with sauteed vegetables. It's so good. Or you can choose to eat, like, hamburgers and chicken strips your entire trip. Like, you can really make it your own. My next lesson that I learned kind of ties into yours. Take time to slow down. That's one of the things that I talk about frequently on TikTok, and a lot of people don't talk about that. Like, this is your vacation. Some of our favorite memories from Disney happened when we slowed down. I think, like, over at Animal Kingdom, just watching the performers, the entertainers in... Is it Africa? If you're rushing from attraction to attraction, so let's say you're trying to get on Expedition Everest and then you're just rushing to get on Safari, or...
Sometimes that is fun to do. We do the same.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
It's not the whole time.
But take time to slow down. One of my, like, things that I always recommend to my clients is pick 3 to 5 attractions in each park, and those are your must-do attractions for your family. Once you've achieved those attractions, then all the rest of it is gravy. Like, that's just, like, extra stuff on the top. Like, we love stopping to watch the Dapper Dans in Magic Kingdom.
Well, that goes kind of my last one, where I kind of mentioned earlier, is when you learn about Disney like we did, you can slow down and you can appreciate it because you know the history behind it. We'll do, obviously, I'm sure, a bunch of episodes on history and Walt and all that, but when you know things you see and where it came from and how, you know, Walt has hand on this or that, or just, you know, makes it a lot more enjoyable and fun instead of just looking at, you know, a random wall poster and thinking it was something just somebody made up in the back just for fun. Everything's got, like, a purpose, and it has the hidden Mickeys. There's just so much going on. Yeah,
and hidden Mickeys, if you don't know, are Mickey silhouettes that are hidden into, like, paintings or attractions, hotels, restaurants. So it's going to be, like, 3 circle shapes that make a Mickey head. We've seen them in concrete before at Disney Springs on the sidewalk, or in a painting at Coronado Springs, in restaurants and attractions. We kind of see them everywhere. Tony actually draws them everywhere. Like, when we're at home, like, whether it's, like, if my card's dusty, he'll draw, like, a Mickey or something like that.
Shower doors and car windows.
Yeah, and
I know somebody does not like Disney. I'll put it on there.
Yeah, I will, like, be, like, walking with family or something like that, and, like, they'll, like, be like, oh, there's a Mickey on the back of my car. What?
So what do you got? One more?
Yeah, my last lesson that I wrote down is don't fill your trip with reservations. We kind of already talked about that, but I know that Disney has over 400 different places to grab food from on your vacation. That's including snack stands in the parks, but that's to say there's a lot of different places you can grab food from. It would be easy to fill your trip with reservations.
Well, now when this podcast comes out, though, they've changed it so you can actually cancel 2 days before?
No, you can cancel 2 hours.
2 hours before.
It used to be you had to cancel your dining reservations up 24 in advance. May not be a bad thing to
have a bunch, but don't be that guy who hoards them, but, you know.
Yeah.
At least it's an option.
But, like, it can be overwhelming for your family to have 3 dining reservations in a day, 2 dining reservations in a day. Sometimes we don't have any dining reservations in our day. And because there's a lot of places, like there's quick service places that have great like dining options.
So my last one I have, it's one everyone's probably known, heard, or probably learned by now. Water's free. Always look for the water. Kind of like bathrooms. Always be don't pass the bathroom. Don't ever pass a water joint, and always make sure somebody has a container on them that you can carry around. Because the worst thing being somewhere in a hot line and you've got nothing to drink.
Especially if you're going in the warmer months of the year.
We like to get like a souvenir tumbler, jug, whatever you want to call it, for where we're staying, or something cool like that. I mean, or just a regular water bottle. But
when we go. So we typically go around our anniversary in February, like early February, and then we also typically go in September. When we go in February, do we always have a water bottle on us or no?
I think you do. I don't like carrying anything.
Tony doesn't. Tony usually, we usually have...
She doesn't even like my wallet in her backpack.
Well, we take turns carrying the backpack. So I have like a Stony Clover backpack that we use. Or I have like a Stony Clover jumbo fanny pack that we use in the parks. And we I'll use the Stony Clover fanny pack.
Somebody's always got to have a backpack or something. Just to throw your little umbrella in, just your little, minis, medications, or your water bottle. When
we go in February, you don't... So if you go in the cooler months of the year, you're not necessarily going to have to bring an umbrella because it doesn't typically rain as much. You're not going to be out in the sun. If you go... But it depends on the weather too, with that said.
You're always going to be in the sun.
Yeah, you're going to be in the sun, but it's not going to be so when we go in September, it's warmer, and having that umbrella packed to get out of the shade is just a really good idea. But
for our first trip, I think that was the majority of our big takeaways. There's probably a couple more in there.
Yeah.
Those are the big ones, the high hitters.
Yeah, I guess we learned so much from that trip. We've learned so much from other trips to come that we've been on, but we'll kind of incorporate things as we go. But we hope those tips that we learned from our first trip will just help enhance the magic of your vacation, whether it's your first vacation to Disney World, your 100th vacation. There's always new things that you can incorporate. If you have any suggestions for future episodes or questions you'd like us to answer, go ahead and give us a follow at Double Dose of Disney Fam. We're either on Instagram or TikTok, and just drop us a DM. Also, if you could please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, just drop us a review there. Go ahead and give us a follow and download the episodes. That would do a huge favor to us for producing the podcast. But we will see you right back here next Wednesday for another episode.
We'll see y'all guys next time.